I just got off a 6-hour shift stocking shelves. My name's Margaret. I'm 87 years old. My knees are shot. Both of them replaced a few years back, but they still ache when the weather changes. My back complains every time I bend down to pick up a box of canned soup. And tomorrow morning I'll be back there again at 6 o'clock sharp. Blue vest, name tag, concrete floor, 6 more hours. Now this wasn't the plan. The plan was retirement. The plan was sitting on a porch somewhere with my husband Stan, drinking coffee and arguing about which tomato plant was growing faster. The plan was grandkids running through the yard. The plan was finally having time to read those books I kept meaning to get to. Instead, I'm asking strangers if they found everything okay in aisle 7. You want to know how that happens? How someone ends up working at 87? It's not one big disaster. It's one small word. Later. Later is a quiet word. You say it so casually you barely notice it. I'll start saving later. We'll figure that out later. Next year will be better. I said that word for about 60 years. Stan and I weren't poor people. He worked at Ford for 34 years. Good union job, steady paycheck. We owned our house. Every summer, we loaded the kids into the station wagon and drove up to Cedar Point. Those kids would run straight to the roller coasters while Stan and I sat on a bench with lemonade watching them scream their heads off. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, or at least that's what it felt like. We always had enough for the month, but there was never quite enough extra. At least that's what we told ourselves. Because every year, something happened. In 1974, Tommy needed braces. $800. That was real money back then. The year after that, the washing machine broke. Then the car transmission went. Then Linda started talking about college. Then the roof started leaking. Life has a funny way of arriving in expenses, one after another, and every time one of those things happened, we said the same sentence. We'll start saving next year. Next year. Always next year. And the thing nobody tells you when you're young is that next year has a habit of turning into 30 years. We spent money on small pleasures too, nothing outrageous. Bowling league on Thursdays, dinner out once in a while, a carton of cigarettes back when we both smoked, $50 here, $20 there. At the time it felt harmless, it felt like living. What I didn't understand back then was that small money, given enough time, grows into something bigger than you expect. But that's not how people think when they're 30 or 40. At that age, retirement feels like a distant country, someplace far off on the map you'll eventually visit, not something you need to prepare for today. Today is for raising kids, paying bills, fixing roofs, so you say later, and life quietly keeps moving. Stan worked until he was 76. Hard worker. Never complained much about it either. He liked being useful. We always said that when he finally retired, we'd slow down. Take a little trip, maybe. Sit on the porch more. Just enjoy the quiet. We talked about it the way people talk about a vacation they'll take someday. Then one morning in 2014, he had a heart attack. He was drinking coffee at the kitchen table. By lunchtime, he was gone. 55 years of marriage, and suddenly the house felt enormous. That's when the numbers started changing. The pension we thought would carry us through retirement didn't work the way we thought it did. Stan's benefit was built around him being alive. When he passed, most of it disappeared. What I receive now is survivor benefits. $847 a month. Social Security gives me about $1,100. You add that together and it doesn't stretch very far. My rent alone takes almost half of it. Groceries keep getting more expensive. Electric bills climb every year. I remember sitting at my kitchen table the first time I wrote those numbers down. I kept adding them twice, 3 times, like maybe I'd done the math wrong, but the numbers were correct, and that's when something became painfully clear. Retirement isn't something that magically happens when you reach a certain age. It's something you have to build, piece by piece, over decades. If you don't build it, it simply isn't there. I waited too long. By the time I understood that truth, I was already in my 70s. Starting late is like trying to plant a tree the day before winter. You might get something to grow, but it won't be strong enough in time. So I did what people do when they have no other option. I went back to work. The store manager who hired me was probably 35, young enough to be my grandson. Nice young man, though. He looked at my application and said, "Are you sure you want to work retail at your age?" I told him I didn't have the luxury of wanting. I had rent. The first few weeks were the hardest. Standing on concrete floors all day when your body is 87 years old is not something I recommend. Your feet swell, your back stiffens, your shoulders start to ache by mid-afternoon. The young people I work with are kind to me. They carry the heavy boxes. They check on me. But I can see the question in their eyes sometimes. Why is this old woman still working? And part of me wants to grab them by the shoulders and say, because I believed a lie you're probably believing right now. That lie is simple. There's always more time. My children are in their 60s now. Tommy lives in Ohio. Linda's down in Kentucky. Stevie still moves around more than a tumbleweed. They help when they can. Linda sent me $500 last Christmas. I cried when I opened that card. Not because of the money, because I realized something that took me a long time to admit. All those years we spent trying to give the kids everything. We thought we were helping them. Braces, weddings, bail money when Stevie got himself in trouble. We told ourselves we'd replace that money later, but later never came. And here's the truth I wish I'd understood back then. Kids don't need perfection from their parents. They need stability. They need parents who won't become a burden when they're old. I love my children more than anything, but if I could go back and do it again, I'd make one change. I would still help them, but I would protect our future first, because someday the roles reverse. Someday your children start worrying about you, and that's not a position most parents want to put their kids in. These days my life is simple. Work 3 days a week, rest the others, make soup, watch the birds outside the window. Sometimes I think about the life Stan and I imagined. The porch, the quiet mornings together. We didn't get that version, but we did get 55 years. And when you think about it, that's not nothing. There's a photograph of us on my dresser, taken in 1972. Stan's got sideburns that make him look like a movie star, and I'm wearing a dress I sewed myself. We look so young, so certain life would unfold the way we expected. I look at that picture sometimes before bed, not with sadness, just with a kind of understanding, because life doesn't always follow the plans we draw up, but it does follow the choices we make, even the small ones, especially the small ones. If you're young and you're listening to me right now, I'm not asking you to become some kind of financial expert. I'm not asking you to give up every small pleasure. I'm just asking you to do one simple thing. Start now. Even if it's $20, even if it's 50, put it somewhere you won't touch it. Pretend it never existed. Because time is the one partner that can grow your money while you sleep. But it only works if you start early. I didn't. And now I wake up at 5 in the morning, pull on that blue vest, stand on concrete floors under bright store lights at 87 years old. This wasn't the retirement I imagined, but it's the one I earned with 60 years of saying the same word, later. So if you take anything from an old woman who's learned this lesson the hard way, let it be this. Later is a quiet promise life almost never keeps. There is only today. And someday, when you're sitting in your own quiet kitchen at 80 years old, looking back across the years, what remains won't be the money you spent. It will be the choices you made when you still had time.